And I will just remind you that you are watching and listening to the Electronic Intifada. This is the Resistance Report for day 916. We're going to look at Hezbollah right now, because Hezbollah has been fighting a fierce battle against Israel's suggested attempts that they were going to take up to the Litani River. We're looking at a map here on the screen that shows Israel at the bottom. The blue line is the de facto border. And then all of South Lebanon up to the Litani River, Israel said that they were going to hold. Well, they changed their mind this week that that's no longer the goal. The goal is now simply a 3-kilometer buffer zone around the border to push fire up. And as Rokhaya Shamsuddin reported for us excellently again for the second week in a row. You can listen to that along with Nora's Gaza News report, reported on the massacres of civilians that happened yesterday. Large wave of Israeli airstrikes against Hezbollah in Lebanon using 50 fighter jets dropped 160 bombs on 100 targets within 10 minutes. However, the Air Force, they bragged about it even more. They said it was 60 seconds. That there's their intention to carry out that heinous massacre in 60 seconds. And they called it Eternal Darkness was the way they named their operation. So again, another revealing Israeli sadism, I guess you could say. So there's 5 Israeli divisions that are fighting spread across from Nakura, Bint Jbeil, and then up the Galilee Panhandle over to Mer Jayoun and Hiam that are up on the top of the panhandle that you see on the right-hand side. And you can see how those places virtually touch the Litani River. So Israeli forces are attempting to push forward for a few kilometers, take a picture on the Litani River and say they achieved their military goals. But really, this week during an IDF briefing, they claimed that they're no longer trying to disarm Hezbollah, which they said they already did. If people remember back for the last 2 years, they said they won that war because they blew up a bunch of people's hands with pagers in a mass terror attack. And they assassinated senior leadership. So they believed that they had won the war. But that was not the case, because in 2024, the 60-day invasion of South Lebanon failed. Israel didn't invade Lebanon. They were unsuccessful. And what they did achieve in Lebanon was to put 5 advanced military posts inside Lebanon. But they did that under the cover of the ceasefire. As Israel is wont to do for these things, violating the ceasefire in its fundamental way. Let's look at the next map, because this will show, you can see it over that previous map. This is where the engagements, face-to-face fighting has happened from Nakura on the west coast to Bint Jbeil, and then up at the top in the Mer Jayoun area, and then up at the very top on the right, that's Hiam, where they're facing ground forces that are repelling Israeli operations. We can take a look at one of those operations here, number 25 we're at now. This is in Taybeh in the Mer Jayoun area, and you can see a tank here that is withdrawing. Israeli newspaper clippings talked about this operation because this was Israeli soldiers fleeing, and Hezbollah is showing us that here. That's a report from Mako News that says the vehicles were left behind. They left 3 excavators behind during a panicked withdrawal. A panicked retreat. Information received by Mako agency indicates that during the attack launched by forces in South Lebanon, which included deep penetration into hostile territory using heavy engineering means, heavy fire was opened on the forces using mortars, high-altitude rockets, and precision missiles. The incident did not end at this point. Shortly after the panicked retreat, Hezbollah fighters came down and encircled the area in case the troops came back to get their what do you call them? Excavators, front end loaders that they had left, that they were trying to change the geography of the land in South Lebanon to make it a little easier for them. Here is how Hezbollah dealt with that, launching here 122 millimeter Grad rockets, Katyushas, as they call them in Lebanon. They're actually Iranian rockets. They're not Grads. All of these weapons are Iranians, built by an indigenous Iranian weapons industry, and many of them are built by Hezbollah. The drones and the guidance systems that are added onto rockets for precision, to make them precision guided missiles, that is all done by Hezbollah. But you can see here they're pounding them at the site with rocket fire. And rocket fire underpins all of these operations. It's been the thing that they've done the most. Upwards of 7,000 rockets and missiles have been fired during this part of the war, during the last 38 days. Today's day 38 of this battle. And you can see that this is the field report, because Hezbollah puts out these field reports every day. We log them and track them, and it's how we can, on this program, connect the dots, because and count the operations and understand what's going on in the battlefield, because their command and control is perfectly intact. They're filing these field reports immediately. They're not delayed. They clearly have communication. Now we're watching them walk through what looks like an abandoned campground, but it's where Israeli forces were setting up Yahalom tunnel units. Apparently, one soldier was killed and 5 were wounded in the artillery and rocket attacks. There's a bridge that they use to get over the river Baidar, there to cross over. And they were ambushed in this site and fled. And you can see their shoes left behind there. You can see their belts. You can see their attempts. This is a makeshift bridge to get over to this area. So just complete abandonment. And we're going to see in a moment here, as the fighter works his way along. There you see a dinghy used for supplies to get across the river. And we're going to see them walk up here to the excavators, 3 excavators that were abandoned during the retreat. And the soldier that was killed was a lone soldier, a foreign fighter from New Jersey who didn't live in Israel, didn't have any connection to Israel, but wanted to go and fight in Israel's army. And he was killed in this operation, one of at least 13 the Israelis have admitted to. Don't feel super confident that that's an accurate number. The Israelis and the Americans have been very tight-lipped about the information front in this war. There we're looking at the excavators there left behind. That one looks like it had been hit. It's got broken glass, but you can see these are the excavators that we saw in Gaza as well. Caterpillar, always supporting Israeli apartheid and criminal aggressions with their gear. You can see they're also blown up through the rocket attacks that are throughout this whole video. And one of the interesting things that we're going to see throughout this report is that the military media department in Hezbollah has given the fighters cameras in a way that they didn't in the previous war. So these are not official media. These are not official cameramen or, as we can see, skilled cameramen, but they are recording their operations. And we're seeing things because of that we never saw in the first battle in 2023 and 2024. Hezbollah was very secretive about the operations, about the tools that they were using, and now we're getting to see a lot more in these recent videos. Let's take a look at the number 26. This is the map of the rocket strikes. So you can see in the bottom of this map there is an inset map, zoomed in on the border line up at the top. And what Hezbollah is doing is hitting Israeli military positions, troop movements, makeshift bases. Anywhere the Israelis move to, they're being shelled from across the border, all the way along. More than 6,500, upwards of 7,000 rockets have been fired, and they're aiming at troops all along the borders there. And it's been the underpinning of this operation, which has been using all different types of weapons, but really founded on. If you look on the left, you can see that the red circles mean the dark red circles mean more than 60 hits on the same positions, or the smaller ones are 30 to 50 hits on the same position, 15 to 30 hits on the same position. So they're just being pounded in their rear bases. And as we saw in the previous video, in their forward bases as well. But this has been critical to Hezbollah's operations. Let's take a look at this next video, because this is going to combine all the things that I just described. Here's fighters. The first fighter says that we're going to show you the outside now. He's talking to the Fadi launcher here. This is a Fadi rocket launcher that is in a hardened shelter, truck mounted, and you can see that he is smashing out the cinder block walls of the hardened shelter. And that's what the other Hezb fighter says. He says, let's show it the outside. Let's show the Fadi the outside, because it's been hiding in here all this time. And there's the truck. In pretty rough shape, but it gets the job done. There was a long report by Hezbollah about another Fadi launcher that we'll break down in a future show, because there's a lot of detail to it. But you can see there, from a hardened shelter, now we're going to watch the fighters wire it up. We can see them with their control panels. These are all things that were previously never shown in Hezbollah operations. So we're seeing a lot. Previously, we would just see the launch, or we might see the fighters. There you see the fighters give the victory sign before launching. And this fighter who's got the camera, he says, this is my first time with the camera, so if I flinch, don't judge me. As the Fadi launches, it makes a significant noise. And he's saying there's another victory sign from the fighters. So we're really seeing the fighters for the first time, rather than being behind the fighters that we saw in the first war. There's the launch, and the cameraman didn't flinch. So good on him for that. But it's important to note that Hezbollah were the founders of this military media. They did it going back to beta and VHS tapes that they would deliver to television stations that would show it to prove their operations against the Israelis, because the Israelis just lie. And then the fighters all get back in the truck and they drive off. And so this is definitely something we never used to see, but they're driving off in the truck after a successful operation. So a very interesting one there. The next one, we're going to see the multiple launch rocket system. And this is what's really, again, we're seeing them in the truck on their way to the site. This is a dangerous operation. But one thing that we learned from the Israelis, and one of the reasons why the Israelis don't think that they can take the area all the way up to the Litani, well, they can't because of the fighters, but also that they can't do it. They would take heavy losses. And also, they've realized that the rockets aren't fired from south of the Litani. These are these larger, particularly these larger multiple launch. They can be fired from behind the Litani River, and many of the heavier missiles and rockets that they have 200 plus kilometer range. So the Litani River isn't any kind of a border. Previously, when they only fired Katyusha rockets, it was somewhat useful because of the range of the Katyushas, but that's a bygone era. Again, we see in this video the fighters all around the launcher. We see what the circumstances is around the fighters. This is a dangerous moment for them. They've got a Hezbollah flag hanging off the launcher. They're communicating with each other about the launch. Israel says that that Hezbollah has between 8,000 and 10,000 missiles left. This is compared to 40,000 that they had before October 7th. But we know that before October 7th, Israel said that number was in the many hundreds of thousands. So there's a lot of revisionist history going on here, because Israel said they defeated Hezbollah. They clearly didn't. We're seeing Hezbollah fighting at a tempo of operations that we've never seen before in any of their previous wars, going all the way back to the 1980s. The number of operations in the last 2 days before the war, there was 160 operations. Here again, you can see them pulling up the truck for another multiple launch. Um, and it's just very interesting to see these details from the commanders. And this fighter is addressing the camera, saying that they will not leave the battlefield. So significant developments on the rocket and missile front here by Hezbollah. Let's take a look at the next one. This is a remarkable one. We're going to watch them set up here World War II era field guns that we're seeing them set up here that we have never seen before. Didn't know they had, but this is for the defense of Bintaj Bale. They said that there are Israeli soldiers mustering into the south of the town. And so you can see the fighters here. They're talking about amongst each other, talking about recording this part. Is it okay to record this part? He's like, yeah, it's fine to record it. And you see them setting it up. You see the cameraman there. Again, and these are firing off very rare weapons that I don't think many people expected to see. This is a KS-19 100 millimeter anti-aircraft gun that's being loaded up here and being used as an anti-personnel weapon to fire on those troops that are down in this southern area of Bintaj Bale. If this war continues, Bintaj Bale will be a major battleground, strategic location, a long history of resistance in Bintaj Bale. The 2006 war essentially died in Bintaj Bale because of the resistance there. So the fight for Bintaj Bale will be significant. There again, the fighter with the victory signs. We see a little bit of their personality. We see the details that go into covering this. We're watching a fighter here remove the netting that covers the weapon in the forest. They're deep inside the forest here. Setting up these guns. The second one is 122 millimeter towed howitzer. So a full-on World War II era field gun that they're going to fire with the rope that you can see there, pulling it off, and it's a massive blast. But these kind of guns, should they have enough ammunition for them, will definitely slow the advance of the Israelis. Although for Hezbollah's fighting doctrine, they're not treating the Israelis entering the town, it's really a town of Bintaj Bale, as the defeat. They're not fighting for a single rock. Nasrallah said it many times before, that our fighters are more valuable than a piece of stone. So they're not going to hold some arbitrary line. They're going to encircle and fight a guerrilla warfare that doesn't allow the Israelis to take control of the city. And when they are in the city, they will be hit regularly. And you can watch this be fired out of the bush. And it's a pretty remarkable bush that you see there. This is the nature of the fight in South Lebanon, and part of the significant advantage that Hezbollah has on this territory. Let's take a look at the next one, because we are seeing here the underground missile bases of the Hezbollah fighters. We're watching here a flashlight fighter walking down into a tunnel apparatus. He chose one direction, but it looked like he could have gone two directions. Same with that one there. He could have gone to the left. He went to the right, suggesting that these missile silos, these missile bases, are significant. They're not single rail, but here they're now walking in this cave, in this tunnel, and they're going to turn here, and you're going to see the rail launcher here for the Qadr, a precision-guided ballistic missile. There's Imad Mughniya, the military architect of Hezbollah, always saluting the fighters. We saw it in Gaza. We saw it in Iran. We always see it in Lebanon. But you can see the single rail there. So this is being launched from underground on a single rail. It can be launched. You saw at each of the turns when he decided to go left or right, you could see a blast door at each of those turns. And that's how you know it's a fully functioning missile silo, because those blast doors have to be blocked at all times for the launch. and it's why the Israelis can't defeat the missile silos in Iran. We're going to find that in this 2-week period of time, Iran is going to dig out their buried silos insofar as they were hit. They can simply be dug out. And here's Hezbollah showing the locations of these missiles because they were high value targets. They targeted the Hakiria, the IDF's headquarters, and Amman, their military intelligence and barracks. On this operation was March 26th. We're getting these videos about a week delayed, about a week after the operations. We're getting them, and you can see even just from week to week the improvements in targeting and the tempo of it, the number, just the straight number of operations. There you see Nasrallah under this, and this second 622 millimeter Qadr 2 that carries a 400 kilogram warhead is aimed at the human shields base, IDF base in Tel Aviv. The Hakiria, the campus, is the headquarters of the IDF in Tel Aviv, and is completely surrounded by civilians, even though it's a new it's an old base, but it's been modernized, and they embrace the fact that it has human shields in downtown Tel Aviv. Number 31 is a map about anti-tank operations, because using rocket as cover fire, keeping troops behind the lines under fire. The anti-tank ops are the first level of defense of the territory in South Lebanon. Again, these match up pretty directly with the Israeli areas to press on. You can see anti-tank operations. This is from the first month of the war, so this goes to April 1st from March 2nd, and they're talking about 136 Israeli tanks had been targeted. Along with 25 other vehicles, bulldozers, Humvees we've seen be hit. But again, that map just gives you a sense of where those anti-tank operations are. And you can see the massive hole in the middle of what is supposed to be the area that Israel says that it's going to claim. And you can clearly see after a month that they have barely advanced, because they already were in forward positions inside Lebanon because of their positions in the ceasefire. So they've really only moved one ridge forward in this entire 40-day battle. Let's take a look at 32, because the anchor of these operations, of course, are these Almas attacks, these cloned Israeli spike systems. And this here is the longest we've seen of the setup of the Almas anti-tank guided missile launcher. Here you can see the fighters setting it up. And again, this is just a totally different view than we had seen of them before. We maybe got this view that you're seeing here now with the fighter holding on, just about getting his readings in and just about to launch. You can see his spotter beside him. We might have gotten just the front half of that in previous videos, but now we see the way the team works together. These are hunter-killer teams, tank-killer teams, firing these top attack anti-tank guided missiles that come, as the name suggests, from above, which is partially designed to evade countermeasures, active protection systems from the Israeli military. But here we're going to see him put it right through the hatch of that Merkava tank there. This operation was in Al Baida, so right near where the troops fled from earlier on. And again, you see the footage because we're on the missile with the Almas. And number 33, we'll get to these drones. Israel showed us the drones, the quadcopter drones that we've seen been flying. Israel wanted us to see what they looked like on the ground. And I'm not sure that that was the best idea, because what it shows is a brilliant setup by Hezbollah. Clean, smart, cheap, easy to assemble, with resilient, undetectable supply chains. They're using common parts that are in all kinds of other things that make it impossible to stamp out the supply chain. They're all easily available. And at each component, at each choice that they've made here, from the battery pack to the propeller to the brushless motor, to the weight, the number of batteries per pack, All of these are interchangeable and can be tweaked as necessary for heavier warheads. And you can see the warheads there. You may remember those from Gaza. Those are anti tank warheads. Those are just single charge 80 millimeter anti tank warheads, high explosive warheads. Um, I expected we would see more tandems like we see Yasin 105s. It's possible that Hezbollah just doesn't have a lot of those because they trained their forces to be tank killers, and they use the Cornet system and they use the Almas system, which are far heavier, more effective systems. Whereas in Gaza, they didn't have the ability to import, and a smart move for them was to make super light, very easy to use, put a weapon in the hand, anti-tank weapon in the hand of every fighter that has the ability to penetrate the Merkava tank, not nearly as much as a Cornet or an Almas. And so it's possible we have seen some tandems in Lebanon, but we see Hezbollah using them for the RPG 29, which is a shoulder fired system, and it's just far more effective to use the tandem warhead in the RPG 29 rather than on these quadcopters that we're seeing. But the total build here, these are all parts that are costing, propeller, carbon fiber frame, brushless motor, customizable battery array, custom flight controller based on the weight, the camera, the transmitter, the antenna. All of these choices were smart choices, widely available, all used in other applications. That's what we've seen for Iran to stifle sanctions, for the Yemenis who are under blockade, to use these parts that are not specific to this one drone, like using Chinese G drones that don't allow you this kind of flexibility. So this is really a brilliant move that Israel's accidentally showing, and presumably showing other resistance groups as well. So it's like, to put this entire package together minus the warhead, the range is something you could get them for $150. The top end of the range was a few $100s. So let's say $250 per drone. And they've been really effective. Let's take a look at how effective they've been. I made a stitch up here, a mixtape, if you will, of a bunch of drone strikes. And again, look at the topography here that they're fighting in, that Israel has to navigate through these low-lying areas in the mountains. Here we're going to see a tank get hit and aimed at the tracks for a mobility kill of that tank. Because as we know from Gaza, Qassam never fired these single round warheads at a tank because they don't penetrate. So what you have to do is you have to pick your targets, you have to hit tracks, you have to put it through open doors that we're going to see in a bit here, and to make them effective, because they're essentially carrying an RPG warhead underneath you can see the propellers there on the upper right, and the anti-tank missile is underneath. So there we saw the back door of a Namr troop carrier, which makes perfect sense. We saw from Qassam's targeting documents that the back door is where they are targeting from. Here's an Aton. This is the first Aton wheeled fighting vehicle that we've seen. But watch, he'll bypass the Aton and go right into the base and take it right in through the front door of the base. This is a hospital that Israel's using. They evacuated the hospital, destroyed it, and now they're using it as a base. You're going to see the pilots, even just the development of the pilots in the 4 weeks of this war is significant. Rather than barreling into that target, he's looping around to see if there's a better target. Here he sees an unarmored or lightly armored Humvee, and it's attacked. So these we've seen adaptation of the targeting system as well, underpinned by the adaptation to create these drones in the first place. Here they're coming down on another set of Atons. That looks like a school. I couldn't pinpoint which school it was, but they're using them. And here you see them assembling, again, something we would never see from Hezbollah. We saw this a little bit from Qassam, but assembling the drone there from the various parts. And it's easy to do. Anyone can do it. You don't have to have your drone specialists. You don't have to have a special supply chain that could be cut off. It's all just really smart, wise way of conducting guerrilla warfare in the 21st century. And this is a D9 armored bulldozer and an excavator that we're seeing. Again, Qassam would fire this weapon at a bulldozer. So this makes what the resistance calls an appropriate weapon, fit for purpose, if you will. So we've seen those adaptations. People might remember back a couple weeks ago when I was showing these, we showed there underneath towards the engine, trying to hit the engine block for a mobility kill. Early on in these videos, we saw some of them where they were flying them and just hitting off the turret of the tank, which is the most heavily guarded, or one of the most heavily guarded parts of the tank. Now watch what they do here. There's a Merkava tank. Watch how the back door is open, and they're going to put it right in through the back door there. And it looks like he hits the bottom of the back door, but if you're detonating an anti-tank weapon in the entranceway of a tank, you're making an absolute mess. And again, casualties just don't match what we're seeing there. Let's look at 30. What are we on now? This is 36, the Ababil. This is the Ababil T. This is a Hezbollah built drone. Also, you can see with the forward canard wings there that distinguish it from the other drones that they fire, the Said 107, although we're going to see Said 107s entering Israel there. You can see the wooden propeller to lower the radar signature on these. They have a bit more distance and can carry a bit heavier warhead than the Syed 107s. These are also built by Hezbollah from Iranian drone specs. I'm not sure what the word to use there is, from designs. And this is how the resistance axis has fought. And this is the realization of the resistance axis throughout this whole battle. Number 37, we are on now. We can see a drone coming in Israel. You can see the Syed 107 flying over. You're going to see the rat-a-tat Israeli flag there. It looks like it's been a tough war for Israel, judging by those flags. They seem sad. And then there's two shots from civilians of the Syed 107. And now let's look at some air defense operations. Number 38 here. We can see them using the Misag. This is an Iranian man-portable surface-to-air missile. There we see the Apache helicopter. They're going to miss. They're going to miss the helicopter, but they show us everything that went into setting that up. The helicopter has a lot of advantages over that particular missile, although you see the helicopter make a beeline to land. He didn't want to be up after that near miss. But it's here. Just let's watch this for 1 second. See, you can see how they set up, and that's something we never would see before from Hezbollah. Okay, let's look at number 39. This is the more ones we're more used to here through the scope here. You can see they're going to use here another. This is a North Korean HT pattern man-portable air defense system. They're going to fire it against an Elbit Hermes 450, and there you go, -1 Hermes 450. Well, one of 4 that have been shot down in the last few weeks. This is a second generation SA-18 man-portable surface-to-air missile, man-pads, as people may see. Jargony people use. A direct hit. So another strike there. And then one last Hezbollah video, because I think this one really wraps up how Hezbollah feels. You're looking at a Fatah 110, possibly a Fatah 360 short-range ballistic missile. And you see they're affixing a sticker. There you see Naim Qassem, Nasrallah, and the Virgin Mary. There's Nasrallah again on the missile. You see there's Musa Sadr, Imam Musa Sadr there. And then on the missile is a sticker that says it's for the people of South Lebanon. And the message says, "You will return to your homes with your heads held high, O honorable people of the South." And then it says on the missile launcher, it says the classic Qassam line, "It was not you who threw, but God when you threw." So they had that on the missile launcher there. And these are very effective short-range ballistic missiles that are the same short-range ballistic missiles that Iran is firing at the Gulf. And so these are doing damage, and these are targeting Israeli military bases and installations, which we get no coverage of whatsoever. I showed you that drone factory that got blown up because it was in the middle of a city, but the bases that are outside of the city, we're not hearing anything about casualties, about hits. It's all being kept secret. And just on the final note, let's turn to Gaza here. Abu Obaida, the new Abu Obaida, who replaced Hudayfa al-Khalut, who was assassinated during the war. Abu Obaida gave a speech today, or the other day, 2 days ago, saying that we emphasize that what the enemy failed to take from us with tanks and genocide will not be taken from us through politics and negotiations. He blessed the people of Gaza for their steadfastness and sacrifice. He said, after a war of genocide and ethnic cleansing, and then some of the most horrific massacres in modern history, the aggression continues to expand, spreading across the region. Israel launched a treacherous aggression against Iran in the most deceptive negotiations in full coordination with the United States. The true nature of the Zionist entity has been exposed, revealing its weakness and total dependence on external support for help. For it will not last. Amid global silence and double standards, the world demands concessions only from the Palestinians. While ignoring the occupation's violations and refusal to honor agreements, the occupation continues targeting civilians to create chaos, turning safe zones into death traps, restricting aid and movement. He also says that we received with great pride the message from the Islamic Republic addressed to our people through the spokesperson, Ibrahim Zolfagari, dedicated to the dedicating operations, putting them on missiles, to our fallen leaders such as Sheikh Ahmed Yassin and Yahya Sinwar. The actions of the fighters in Iran, Lebanon, and Yemen are extensions of the Al-Aqsa flood, punishing those responsible for those war crimes. We declare full support for Lebanon, its people, and its resistance, and renew our call for the fighters of the Lebanese resistance to turn direct confrontation into a real opportunity to capture U.S. soldiers. And he ends by saying, once again, we emphasize that what the enemy failed to take from us with tanks and genocide will not be taken from us with politics and negotiations. Qassam is not disarming, as you know, as a regular viewer of this show. That is the Resistance Report for week 6 of the Iran War and day 916 of the genocide in Gaza.